In the quiet, oppressive darkness of the prison cell, Don Carlos awoke with a jolt at the sound of footsteps, soft and deliberate, circling him like a predator stalking its prey. Clutching the threadbare blanket, he lay on his straw mattress, damp with sweat from haunting dreams. The cold bit into his flesh through the stone walls, while the faint torch glow under the iron door offered scant comfort. For hours, Carlos listened to the footsteps, heart pounding, breath ragged and uneven. He whispered they were phantoms, figments of his tortured mind, or perhaps his father's spies ensuring their prince remained locked away. Yet he knew the truth. The footsteps always returned. Once, the Alcazar had been his playground, echoing with his laughter as the golden heir to an empire. But even then, the shadows clung to him, dark whispers of his temper and unpredictable moods rippling like storms. Discontent swirled around him, and by 16, his fierce rages had become infamous. His father, King Philip II, was ever watchful, his dark eyes missing nothing. The evening that sealed Carlos's fate was like any other, his fury inflamed by wine and frustration. He charged into the royal chapel, shouting curses against his father's rule and the weighty crown suffocating him. Philip found him there, in the flickering candlelight, their eyes locking in a moment heavy with unspoken legacy. The arrest followed swiftly. Dragged from his chambers and through the palace, Carlos heard their whispers, courtiers spinning lies of treason and madness. His father stood silent on the staircase as his son was erased from the throne's lineage. In his cell, time blurred and dissolved into endless monotony. His fine clothes had become rags, and the air reeked of filth and mildew. He marked time in scratches on the walls, counting days or perhaps years. He could no longer be certain. Hunger gnawed at him constantly, as guards sometimes remembered to bring him rancid meat and stale bread. Madness crept in, weaving with dreams of skies and thrones until it was impossible to discern reality. Fever came in waves, leaving his joints aching and stomach hollow, while guards whispered outside about his screams of torment and apparent possession. Dr. Mendoza arrived at dusk, part of King Philip's uncertain plan. The stench of sweat and rot met him first, as Carlos lay like a broken figure, skeletal and fever-bright. Mendoza assessed the prince, his wrists ulcered and ribs like prison bars. Mendoza urged care, yet the captain refused, only interested in assessments to report back to the king. Briefly, compassion flickered as Mendoza dabbed lavender oil on Carlos's tortured wrists, earning a whisper about the lavender his mother used to wear. "You remember too much," Mendoza noted gently, as Carlos laughed, his bitterness echoing down the stone hall. Hunger drove Carlos to a brutal act, lunging at rats to sate the emptiness inside. Their blood stained his chin as he consumed them. Tears and laughter tumbled together, growing madness that frightened even the guards. Anna, a servant girl, approached his cell with quiet compassion. She slipped water, bread, and cheese through the slot, drawn by pity and defiance to his desperation. They made fleeting eye contact, her hands trembling, his gaze wild. The fever finally swept him in its relentless current, blurring the boundaries between fantasy and his dark reality. His mother's specter, his father's booming voice, the illusions of a throne never to be his. Everything twisted into grotesque truths. Real footsteps returned, and in the shadowy containment of his cell, King Philip stood before him, an unreadable figure, offering no comfort nor reconciliation. Carlos rasped accusations. His father replied, not with compassion, but the cold reality of their broken bond. Then Philip turned away with silent disdain. Anna remained with Carlos until the end, a still beacon as his life drew the final, exhausted breath. She wept beside his broken form, holding his hand as a thread of warmth against the encroaching chill. As she lit a candle, casting gentle light to stand against the dark, the prince's spirit found release, leaving behind the shadows that bound him. In death, Don Carlos found a freedom denied him in life. A prince outcast finally free from the chains of legacy and expectation.